Caleb Walker survived the crash, but the planet marked him before he could even breathe. His transport skiff hit Elarion at a shallow angle, carving a half-mile scar across the blue glass desert before the emergency foam finally hardened around the broken hull. For a while, there was only ringing. Then heat. Then the thin taste of smoke inside his helmet. Caleb opened his eyes to a cracked windshield filled with two pale moons and a sky the color of old steel. Warning lights blinked red across the cockpit. Left engine gone. Main beacon offline. Hull pressure unstable. Navigation dead. Cargo bay breached. He stared at the damage list, blinked once, and whispered, "Well, that seems rude." His own voice helped. It proved he was still inside his body. He released the harness, dropped 6 inches to the tilted floor, and nearly fell when his right knee complained. Not broken. Bruised. His left palm had a shallow cut where a shard of console glass had split the glove. Also not fatal. The ship, however, was having a much worse day. Caleb moved by habit because habit was what kept panic from getting promoted. Check oxygen. Check water. Check fire suppression. Check medkit. Check emergency drone. Pike, his palm-sized repair drone, lay upside down in a storage net with one rotor bent, and its status eye blinking a pathetic amber. Caleb freed it carefully. "You too, huh?" Pike gave a weak chirp. "Do not start. I am also disappointed in management." Outside, wind moved over the glass desert in long singing waves. The sound came through the hull like distant bells rubbed with sandpaper. Caleb forced the side hatch open with a manual lever and stepped down into the strange blue light of Elarion. The ground beneath his boots was translucent, not ice, not mineral exactly, but layers of ancient glass veined with soft green fire. Far away, crystal pillars rose from the desert like frozen lightning, each one humming faintly when the wind touched it. The air was thin but breathable. Dry. Metallic. Cold enough to bite through the seams of his survival suit. He pulled his collar tight and looked back at the skiff. No rescue without a beacon. No beacon without power. No power without crawling through wreckage that still smelled like overheated wire and bad luck. He got to work. First, he dragged the med kit into shade under the broken wing. Then he set the portable condenser on a flat sheet of glass and waited for it to pull moisture from the thin air. Then he patched Pike's rotor with a strip of brace tape. The drone lifted 3 inches, wobbled, and bumped gently into his shoulder. "Graceful," Caleb said. "We will both lie in the report." He was halfway through opening the beacon panel when the desert answered him. Not with thunder. With light. The crystal pillars around the crash site flickered one by one, green lines racing through their cores as if something below the ground had just noticed him. Caleb froze with a wire cutter in his hand. The skiff beacon, still disconnected, pulsed once on its own. A low alien phrase rolled out of the dead communication speaker, distorted but clear enough for his translator to catch. "Unregistered witness detected." Caleb looked at Pike. Pike chirped. "Do not look at me. I did not register for anything." The glass beneath his boots lit in a widening circle. Lines of old circuitry, or roots, or something older than both, spread outward from the crash scar. The pillars carried the glow across the desert until the horizon flashed. Then the sky changed. High above, thin white searchlines opened like eyes in orbit. Caleb's wrist unit screamed with incoming signal interference. Every frequency filled at once, not with rescue, but with a planetary broadcast in a language his translator struggled to hold. Human organism alive. Highest capture priority. Do not destroy. Do not allow departure. Witness value, critical. Caleb slowly lowered the wire cutter. "That," he said to the empty desert, "is excessive." A sound came from under the wreckage behind him. Not mechanical. Small. Wet. Panicked. Caleb turned toward the cargo bay, where a section of hull plate had collapsed over a hollow in the glass. Beneath it, something moved. A native creature, about the size of a terrier, translucent along the spine, with 6 delicate legs and a ribcage that glowed faintly blue under the skin. It was pinned under a sheet of thermal paneling, not crushed, but trapped where the metal had heated the glass around it. Caleb looked at the sky, where the search lines were growing brighter. Then at the creature. Then at the water condenser, which had produced maybe 4 ounces. "Of course," he muttered. He carried the water over and poured a little along the hot edge of the panel to cool it. Steam hissed up. The creature shivered. "Easy. I know. Bad day all around." He wedged the wire cutter under the panel and braced his shoulder against the hull. It moved half an inch. Not enough. He called Pike over, clipped the drone's micro cable to the panel seam, and used the skiff frame as leverage. Together, badly and with many unpleasant noises, they shifted the panel until the creature could pull one leg free. Caleb poured the last of the water across its side. "There you go. Breathe if that is what you do." That was when he heard footsteps behind him. Soft. Controlled. Not human. Caleb did not turn quickly. Quick movements made nervous people creative. He raised both hands, palms open, the cut on his left glove visible. "I am guessing this is your planet," he said. A woman stood 20 yards away on a ridge of blue glass. Alien, but close enough in shape that his startled brain tried to make sense of her before respect caught up. Her skin was pale blue-gray with a soft, cool undertone, her amber eyes fixed on him beneath the shadow of a dark field hood. Black hair with a silver sheen slipped from under the hood in rain-like strands. She wore a charcoal archivist cloak marked with copper symbols and carried a scanning device shaped like a narrow crescent. The device was aimed at his chest. She looked from him to the freed creature, then to the empty water flask in his hand. "You are Caleb Walker," her translator said through a crystal at her throat. "Dominion law requires your surrender." Caleb glanced up as distant drone lights appeared across the horizon, moving fast. Then he looked back at the little creature, now crawling shakily toward a crack in the glass. He stood between it and the ridge without thinking. "Can I surrender after I finish helping?" The alien woman did not answer. Her eyes stayed on the creature, then on his open hands. Behind her, the first hunter drones cut through the metallic wind, and every crystal pillar in the desert began to glow brighter, as if the whole planet was holding its breath. The hunter drones arrived like a verdict written in light. They crossed the blue glass desert in a clean triangular formation, each one no larger than a suitcase, black against the pale moons, their undersides pulsing with Dominion amber. Caleb Walker kept his hands raised and his body angled between the drones and the small glass-backed creature still crawling toward safety under the wrecked hull. It was a ridiculous place to make a moral stand. He had no cover, no working beacon, one wounded hand, a repair drone with a crooked rotor, and a stranger in a charcoal archivist cloak pointing a crescent scanner at his chest. Still, the little creature was breathing now, or doing the local version of it, and Caleb had already spent his water on the thing. Walking away seemed inefficient. The alien woman on the ridge did not move when the drones descended. Her amber eyes tracked their approach, and for the first time Caleb saw doubt cross her face. Not fear. Not yet. Something more complicated. Recognition, maybe, that the machines had come too fast. "Field Archivist Lyra Vey," the lead drone announced, its voice flat through the metallic wind. "Target located. Maintain distance. Human organism to be secured under Chancellor authority. Secondary witnesses to withdraw." Caleb turned his head slightly toward her. "I am guessing that is you." "Yes," she said. Her scanner remained raised, but the angle had lowered by 2 inches. "And you were not supposed to find me first? I was sent to confirm the impact object and assess contamination. Congratulations. I am probably the most confused contaminant you have ever met." She did not smile. The lead drone rotated toward Caleb. A ring of amber light swept over him from boots to helmet collar. "Caleb Walker. Species human. Status alive. Compliance required." "I am having a little trouble with that last part," Caleb said. "My ship is on fire in 3 places, your planet is yelling at me, and I just used all my water on a local animal. Could we schedule compliance after basic hydration? The drone did not appreciate tone. They rarely did. It emitted a sharper pulse. The crystal pillars around the crash site brightened again, green lines racing through them like nerves under glass. Lyra's crescent scanner reacted before she did, flashing a symbol Caleb could not read. Her breath caught. That cannot be right. I hear that a lot after landings. The pillars are not scanning you. Great. They are responding to you. The glass under Caleb's boots gave a low, musical hum. The small creature vanished into a crack below the wreckage, leaving only a faint blue smear of cooling light behind. Good. One problem demoted. The drones shifted formation, closing distance. Pike chirped from Caleb's shoulder, a nervous little electronic stutter. Caleb murmured, "Stay calm." Pike chirped again. "Yes, I know I said that to both of us." Lyra stepped down from the ridge, cloak dragging over the glass. "Dominion drones, I am field authority at the crash site. I have not completed contamination assessment." The lead drone turned toward her. "Field authority superseded. Chancellor Kale has issued highest capture priority. Without archivist review? Review suspended." Her mouth tightened. Caleb knew that look. It was the look of a professional watching someone far away break the rules and call it urgency. "Why?" she asked. The drone did not answer. Instead, it projected a containment grid over Caleb's position, amber lines forming across the ground. The glass hummed louder, answering the grid with green. Caleb felt the vibration through his boots and into his bones. The damaged skiff creaked behind him. One of the engine housings, still hot from the crash, shifted on its struts. Lyra saw it too. "Move away from the hull," she said. "Gladly," Caleb answered. "Which direction is least arrest-shaped?" Before she could reply, the desert cracked. Not violently. Not explosively. More like ice deciding it had carried enough weight. A bright line opened from the buried engine casing, spreading across the glass between Caleb and Lyra. Green light poured through the seam. The drones rose, but their containment grid flickered and dragged against the ground, making the crack widen. Caleb grabbed his tool bag with one hand and Pike with the other. "That seems structurally personal." Lyra stepped back, but the ridge under her fractured too, leaving her on a slanted plate of blue glass sliding toward the glowing seam. Her scanner fell from her hand and skittered away. The drones did not move to help her. They recalculated around the target. Caleb saw that in one furious instant. Their priority was him. Not her. Not the crash site. Not the planet opening beneath their field archivist. He hooked his rescue line to the skiff frame, clipped the other end around his waist, and ran toward the crack. Lyra looked up, startled. "Do not come closer. The glass is unstable. I noticed. You are the target. Apparently." He threw the line coil across the gap. It landed short. He cursed, grabbed a broken panel brace, clipped Pike's micro-cable to the coil, and sent the drone wobbling across the fractured air. Pike skimmed the edge of the crack, rotor whining, then dropped the line near Lyra's boots. She stared at it. "Put it around your wrist," Caleb said. "Why?" "Because you are sliding. You should be running. You are very committed to bad timing." The glass plate shifted under her. That ended the debate. Lyra wrapped the line around her wrist and forearm. Caleb braced his boots against a ridge of cooled hull foam and pulled. His injured palm burned inside the glove. The rescue line went tight. Lyra climbed, boots scraping across the slick blue surface, one hand digging for grip along the glass vein. Pike hovered uselessly above them, chirping encouragement or panic. The drones moved closer, amber lights strobing. "Target non-compliant. Stand down." Caleb pulled harder. "Busy." Lyra reached the edge, and he caught her sleeve, not her skin, careful even in the rush. She noticed. Her eyes snapped to his hand, then his face, then the drones above them. Together they stumbled back from the widening crack just as the engine housing sank halfway into the glowing seam with a deep bell-like groan. The glass wake rolled outward in a wave. Caleb and Lyra fell behind the broken wing, shielded by its curve as the desert rang around them. No impact. No blast. Just resonance, huge and alive, passing under the crash site like the planet had spoken one syllable too loudly. When it faded, Caleb lay on his back staring up at the drones, breathing hard. Lyra was beside him, one hand still tangled in the rescue line. For several seconds Heather moved. Then she said, "You pulled me up." Caleb turned his head. "You were falling. I was sent to capture you. You were still falling." Her expression did something strange then. Dominion logic, whatever it was, had no easy shelf for that sentence. The lead drone descended lower. "Field Archivist Lyra Vey, withdraw from target proximity." Lyra sat up slowly. Her gaze moved from Caleb's bleeding glove to the rescue line to the drones that had ignored her slide into the crack. Then she picked up her crescent scanner from where it lay against the glass. The device flickered with restored data, painting Caleb in green and amber symbols. "Drone unit," she said, voice controlled. "The target's presence is causing active resonance with pre-Dominion structures. Improper containment may destabilize the site. I am initiating archival quarantine protocol." The drone paused. "Quarantine protocol requires council confirmation. Emergency field clause," Lyra said. "Contamination assessment incomplete. Interference risks evidence corruption." Caleb whispered. "Is that true?" "Partly," she said without moving her lips. "My favorite kind of true." The drone processed. Above them, the orbital search lines shifted, uncertain. Bureaucracy, Caleb had learned, was one of the few things that could slow a machine with orders. Lyra stood, brushing glass dust from her cloak. "I will escort the human to a controlled shelter for analysis. Coordinates required." She looked at Caleb, then at the glowing pillars, then toward a distant ridge where the desert rose into dark blue formations. "Cave System 7. Blue Glass Basin." The drone hovered. "Tracking active." "Of course," she said. The drone formation lifted but did not retreat far. They circled overhead like patient suspicion. Lyra turned to Caleb. "Walk. To the controlled shelter? To somewhere the drones cannot hear us easily." He gathered his medkit, pike, and the half-working condenser. His skiff smoked behind him, broken and alone under the moons. "For the record," he said, falling into step beside her, "I still have no idea why I am important." Lyra looked at the green light pulsing beneath the glass where his boots touched. "Neither do I." The answer should not have reassured him. Somehow it did. They walked away from the wreck through a desert that sang under their feet, followed by drones, watched by ancient pillars, and connected by a rescue line neither of them had remembered to untie. The blue glass basin was not a cave so much as a wound the planet had decided to make beautiful. It opened at the edge of the desert where the flat crystal plain rose into folded ridges, each layer translucent and veined with green light. Caleb Walker followed Lyra Vey through a narrow entrance barely wide enough for his shoulders, ducking under glass teeth that caught the moonlight and split it into pale ribbons across the walls. Behind them, the hunter drones remained outside, their amber tracking lights sweeping the ridge, but unable to enter without shattering the fragile formations. Lyra had said that like a fact. Caleb suspected it was also a prayer. Inside, the air was cooler and damp, threaded with the smell of minerals, old rain, and something faintly electric. Every footstep woke a soft tone from the floor. Not an echo. A response. Caleb glanced down as green pulses spread beneath his boots, then faded after Lyra stepped near them. "Still doing that," he said. Lyra kept walking, scanner in one hand, cloak brushing the glass. "Yes." "Is that bad?" "It is impossible." "That is a category, not an answer." She stopped beside a wall where fractured images shimmered under the surface, too blurry to name. Shapes of towers, crowds, ships maybe, then the Dominion seal sliding over them like frost. "Before Dominion rule, The desert stones were called the Memory Basin's outer nerves. They stored civic history, witness records, trade oaths, first contact agreements. That is what the oldest fragments say. Caleb adjusted the strap on his medkit. Fragments? Most of the archive was sealed, rewritten, or declared contaminated. By your counsel. She did not answer right away. The cave answered for her with a faint green flicker under Caleb's hand when he steadied himself against the wall. The blurred image sharpened for one breath, Elarion citizens standing beside beings of several different species beneath banners of blue glass. Then the Dominion seal flashed over it, and the image broke into static. Caleb pulled his hand back slowly. That looked like aliens. Lyra's mouth tightened. To you, we are all aliens. There. I mean aliens to you. Outsiders, she said, and the words sounded rehearsed. Then, quieter, we are taught they brought instability, disease, record corruption, resource collapse. Caleb looked at the wall where the image had been. And you believe that? She turned the scanner toward him. I believe the record. Same thing? Her amber eyes lifted from the device. It was supposed to be. They reached a hollow chamber deeper in the cave, round and still, with a pool of clear liquid glass at the center. It reflected the two moons even though no open sky was visible. Lyra knelt beside it, set her scanner on the rim, and watched the readings climb in sharp green lines. The drones cannot hear us here, she said. The basin disrupts Dominion surveillance. Caleb sank onto a smooth glass ledge, finally letting the pain in his knee complain openly. Pike hovered down onto his shoulder with a weak chirp, then folded its bent rotor like a tired bird. Good. Because I have questions, and several of them involve why my bad landing became a planetary emergency. Lyra tapped through encrypted files on her scanner. When your beacon touched the old network, the system named you an unregistered witness. That term should not exist in active law. But it does. In pre-Dominion law, a witness was a being whose testimony could not be altered by local authority. An unregistered witness meant someone outside all civic bloodlines, outside council control, outside archive inheritance. Caleb stared at her. So I am important because your filing system cannot edit me? That may be part of it. That is the worst promotion I have ever received. Lyra almost reacted. Not a smile, but the smallest break in the tension around her eyes. Then her scanner flashed red. She turned it away quickly, but not before Caleb saw his own face in the projection under Dominion script. Human alive. Resonance carrier. Highest capture priority. Transfer to central memory custody. No independent review. He leaned forward. What is central memory custody? Lyra's fingers stilled on the scanner. A secure facility. That is a location, not an answer. It is where unstable witnesses are contained until the council decides what record they belong to. And if they decide wrong? She looked at him then, and silence did the rest. Caleb nodded slowly. Right. The cave hummed under them, a low tone that rose and fell with the green light around the pool. Lyra looked exhausted, not physically, but morally, like someone had spent her life carrying a library and just realized some of the shelves were built to hide doors. I was sent to document a fallen object, she said. Then to confirm a contaminant. Then to step back while drones took you. Orders changed before my first assessment reached the archive. Because somebody already knew what I might trigger. Yes. Your Chancellor? Voron Kale controls central memory access. Nothing this large moves without him. Caleb rubbed his eyes with the heel of his good hand. I was hauling agricultural condenser parts to a mining colony. I am not a spy. I am not a soldier. I am not even a good tourist. I crashed because a magnetic storm ate my navigation. I know. You do? Lyra pointed to her scanner. Your ship log matches your statement. Your cargo matches your route. Your medical stress markers indicate confusion more than deception. Nice to be biologically insulting but cleared. Also, you used your only water to cool a mirror kit. The little glass dog thing? Mirror kit, yes. Most off-world threats would not waste survival resources on a non-sentient desert animal. Caleb leaned back against the wall and winced as his ribs reminded him to stop having posture. I am not most off-world threats. That is becoming difficult to ignore. Another pulse moved through the cave. This time the tunnel beyond the blue glass pool narrowed until Caleb Walker had to turn sideways in places, one shoulder brushing the cold wall while Pike drifted behind him with a crooked little hum. Every step sent green light ahead through the floor, waking lines that had not carried a witness in centuries. Lyra Vey moved in front of him, scanner raised, charcoal cloak torn at the hem from the desert glass, amber eyes fixed on the symbols appearing beneath their feet. She had crushed her tracking cuff less than 10 minutes ago. Caleb kept thinking about the sound it made. Small. Final. Not heroic. The kind of sound a person made when they stopped asking a lie for permission. Behind them, the hunter drones remained outside the cave mouth, unable to enter the fragile formations without damaging the very evidence they had been ordered to preserve. That bought time. Not safety. Time was thinner. More honest. The deeper tunnel opened into a long gallery where the walls were filled with frozen images. Not projections exactly. More like memories trapped inside glass and waiting for a certain kind of light. Caleb saw Elarion as it had been before the Dominion seal. Markets under open moons, ships from other worlds resting beside crystal towers, children with blue-gray skin chasing small machines through plazas, elders recording testimonies from visitors whose shapes Caleb's translator could not name. He stopped before an image of an Elarion woman placing both hands against the chest of a tall feathered alien, not in fear, but greeting. The phrase under it rendered slowly across his visor. Shared breath, shared record. Your people welcomed outsiders, he said. Lyra stood beside him, reading the original script with her jaw tight. That is what the wall says. But not what you were taught. No, what were you taught? She did not answer quickly. The gallery hummed around them, quiet as held breath. That outsiders came with false gifts. That they corrupted memory with incompatible testimony. That Dominion rule saved Elarion by purifying the archive. Caleb looked at the old image, at the warmth in the frozen gesture. Purifying. That word always brings a mop to a crime scene. Lyra glanced at him. You speak strangely when afraid. That is because screaming has limited technical value. She almost smiled again, but the scanner interrupted with a low pulse. Ahead, the tunnel sloped down into darkness. At the far end, a circular door of black-blue glass waited, sealed by overlapping rings of script. Lyra's breath caught. Central memory access. Good? Impossible. You use that word often on this planet. It has been an unusual day. Caleb lifted his injured palm. The cut had sealed badly under the glove, a dark line across the skin. Does that thing open the same way as the pool? Lyra stared at the sealed door. Maybe. But if it does, the basin will not just show fragments. It will connect to the sky relays. Every public archive tower on Elarion is built from this network. So if it opens, everyone sees. If it opens, everyone remembers. The difference mattered. Caleb felt it. He looked back down the gallery, toward the distant cave entrance where amber drone lights flashed faintly between the stones. And if Dominion reaches us first? Lyra's scanner received a broadcast before she could answer. Chancellor Voren Kale appeared as a projection above the glass floor, tall, silver-robed, his pale copper face arranged into the careful sorrow of a man who expected obedience to mistake itself for compassion. His image flickered, distorted by the cave, but his voice carried clearly. Field Archivist Lyra Vey. Your distress is understood. You are in proximity to a resonance carrier, and his influence may impair judgment. Step away from the human and your record can still be preserved. Lyra went still. Caleb noticed how her fingers tightened around the scanner, not from fear of the drones, but from the word record. Voren knew exactly where to press. My record? She asked. Your guild standing. Your family archive. Your professional lineage. All may remain intact if you comply now. Caleb looked at her, then at the sealed door. He understood enough. On Elarion, memory was not just history. It was citizenship, identity, belonging. Vorin was not threatening her life. He was threatening to unwrite the parts of her that proved she had lived correctly. Lyra's voice stayed level. Why was the human marked as an unregistered witness before assessment? Vorin's expression softened further. Ancient systems misname danger. That is why governance exists. Why did the outer nerve show first contact records that are absent from Dominion archive? Contaminated visual residue. Why did the old law say no single people shall own memory? The projection flickered once. Vorin's sorrow thinned. You are repeating corrupted prompts. Caleb stepped forward, tired of standing inside someone else's manipulation. She is asking questions. Vorin's gaze shifted to him. Cold now. No false softness needed for the outsider. Caleb Walker, you are alive because we require you intact. Do not mistake that for freedom. Caleb nodded slowly. That is very clear, actually. You have activated restricted systems beyond your comprehension. I get that a lot. You will be contained humanely. That word is doing some lifting. Vorin's eyes narrowed. You crashed into a world whose history you do not understand. Caleb looked at Lyra, at the gallery walls, at the faces in ancient glass that Dominion had tried to cover with fear. True, he said. But I know what it looks like when someone is afraid of a witness. The projection snapped brighter. Field Archivist, final instruction. Surrender the human or be removed from all official record. Lyra lowered her scanner. The gallery became very quiet. Pike hovered beside Caleb's shoulder, rotor ticking. Somewhere beyond the door, the central basin pulsed once, like a heart behind glass. Lyra looked at Vorin's image, and when she spoke, her voice did not shake. Telling the truth should not be treason. Then she turned off her scanner's Dominion link. Vorin's projection collapsed into sparks of amber light. For a moment, neither Caleb nor Lyra moved. That was the thing about choosing a side. The universe did not always applaud. Sometimes it just removed the bridge behind you. Caleb looked at her. I am sorry. She frowned slightly. For what? For being the reason he could threaten you. No, she said. He was always able to threaten me. You are the reason I noticed. The answer hit him harder than comfort would have. He looked down at his injured hand. Then let us make that regrettable for him. They approached the sealed door. The rings of script brightened as Caleb neared, but did not open. Lyra read quickly. It requires witness contact and local archivist consent. Conveniently dramatic. It says the witness must not be coerced. That is better than most doors. She looked at him. Do you consent? He held up his bleeding palm with a tired half-smile. To opening the ancient truth door on the planet that wants to arrest me? Yes. Under protest from my common sense. And I consent as archivist. The door responded to her voice, rings turning one by one. Caleb pressed his palm to the center. Pain flared briefly as the cut reopened against the cold glass. A single drop of blood spread into the script, not red for long, but white-green, racing through the door's lines. Lyra placed her hand beside his, her blue-gray fingers steady against the surface. The final ring unlocked. The door dissolved. Beyond it lay the Memory Basin's heart, a vast underground chamber open to the sky through a circular shaft of glass, where the two moons shone down onto a lake of liquid light. Around the water stood thousands of memory stones, each one dim under Dominion seals like stars covered in ash. Caleb took one step in, and every stone answered. Light rose from the floor in waves. Not loud. Not violent. Just awake. The basin spoke in a voice that seemed to come from water, stone, and the space between Caleb's ribs. Unregistered witness confirmed. Local archivist consent confirmed. Suppressed record restoration available. Public relay access blocked by Dominion authority. Caleb exhaled. Of course there is a block. Lyra looked toward a tall central pillar where amber Dominion code wrapped around the upper relay like a chain. The sky relay is sealed. Can we bypass it? With an archive key, maybe. With council authority, easily. I am fresh out of council authority. Pike chirped from his shoulder. Caleb looked at the drone, then at the beacon module clipped to his belt, the one he had stripped from the skiff before leaving. But I do have a bad rescue beacon. Lyra stared. You want to connect your beacon to the memory basin? I wanted to call for help. This place wants to call for truth. Signal is signal if you offend enough engineers. That sounds unsafe. Most history seems to be. He knelt by the central pillar and opened the beacon housing. His hands moved with the calm that came only when fear finally became a list of tasks. Power lead. Ground strap. Antenna coil. Translation interface. Pike stabilized the tiny wires with its micro-claws while Caleb bridged human emergency frequency into ancient Elarion relay crystal. Lyra worked beside him, removing Dominion code seals one layer at a time with her archivist scanner, hands flying through symbols she had once used to preserve the same system that now tried to bury her. Above them, the chamber shook. The drones had entered the outer gallery. Not close yet. Close enough. Caleb did not look up. How long? Lyra asked. Until it works or catches fire. Which is likely? Emotionally, both. The beacon light flickered from dead red to amber to green. The central pillar accepted the connection. Across the chamber, the dim memory stones brightened, one after another, each holding a record Dominion had sealed: alliances, migrations, mixed councils, treaties, songs, names of visitors once honored as witnesses. The basin voice returned. Public relay path available through human emergency carrier. Confirm release. Lyra looked at Caleb. Caleb looked at the stones, then toward the distant sound of drones in the gallery. He had crashed here by accident. He had wanted water, a beacon, a way home. He did not want to become a planet's legal problem, moral test, or historical can-opener. But he thought of the little mirror kit breathing under the wreckage, of Lyra sliding toward the glass quake while drones watched him instead, of Voran offering to erase her for asking questions. Release it, he said. Lyra's voice followed his, clear and steady. Release all suppressed records. The memory basin opened to the sky. The sky above Elarion did not explode with truth. It opened like an eye that had been closed for too long. From the circular shaft above the memory basin, a column of white-green light rose into the night, carrying Caleb Walker's patched rescue beacon signal through the ancient relay and into every public archive tower on the planet. The two moons turned pale behind it. The blue glass desert outside answered in rings, crystal pillars lighting one after another across miles of cold sand until the horizon looked like a field of stars planted in the ground. Inside the basin's heart, thousands of memory stones awakened around Caleb and Lyra Vey, each one lifting a record from darkness and sending it upward through the human emergency carrier he had built from bad wiring, desperation, and a beacon that had no idea it had become history's loudest complaint. Caleb knelt beside the central pillar with Pike gripping a bundle of glowing leads in its micro-claws, the little drone buzzing like an anxious insect. His injured palm throbbed where the door had reopened the cut, and his ribs hurt every time he breathed too deeply, but he did not move. When a system finally worked after that much trouble, you stayed with it until it either stabilized or admitted it hated you. Lyra stood beside him with both hands on her archivist scanner, removing Dominion seals as fast as the basin revealed them. Her face was lit from below by green memory light and from above by the moon's, blue-gray skin pale with exhaustion, amber eyes reflecting records she had been trained never to see. It is reaching the first cities, she said. Her voice was almost a whisper. Outer towers are repeating the feed. Caleb adjusted a power bridge before it burned out. Good. You do not understand. Every civic archive. Every school hall. Every court registry. Every Dominion broadcast wall. That sounds like public enough. A sound rolled through the chamber behind them. The hunter drones entered the basin gallery at last, amber lights flickering against the flood of green records. They did not rush forward. They paused, recalculating, because the chamber had become both evidence and transmission. Damage it, and Dominion destroyed what it claimed to protect. Ignore it, and the truth kept spreading. Machines disliked moral traps almost as much as governments did. The lead drone projected Chancellor Voron Kale above the floor, but the image came through broken, his silver robes cut into bands by interference from the old system. "Terminate the unauthorized relay," he ordered. His voice echoed through the chamber and across the public feed before Dominion could isolate it. "Field Archivist Vey, you are assisting foreign contamination." Lyra did not look away from her scanner. "The record is restoring itself. The record is being violated." Caleb glanced up. "Funny thing about locked rooms. The people who open them always get blamed for the smell." Voron's projection sharpened just enough for his eyes to find Caleb. "You are nothing but an accident with blood the system failed to classify." Caleb tightened a wire with his good hand. "I have been called worse by customs officers. You think humor protects you? No. It keeps me from giving you the dramatic silence you are clearly fishing for." Lyra's mouth twitched despite everything. Voron's face hardened. "Citizens of Elarion, disregard the corrupted images spreading through illegal channels. The human organism is triggering pre-Dominion contamination artifacts. Remain calm. Await verified archive correction." But his warning went out beside the very records he tried to bury. Above his projection, the basin displayed ancient Elarion ports filled with off-world ships, children learning languages from visitors, mixed councils signing water treaties, healing exchanges, food convoys, rescue agreements during glass storms, public oaths carved into the old civic floor. No single people shall own memory. Dominion seals appeared over each record, time-stamped centuries later, altering words, removing species names, replacing alliance with contamination, visitor with invader, witness with threat. The lie did not crack all at once. It became visible line by line. That was worse for Voron. A crack could be dismissed as damage. A line could be read. Lyra froze over one record. Caleb noticed because her hand stopped moving. On the display before her, a family archive opened, Vey lineage 7th civic ring, original guild oath. The old version showed Lyra's ancestors standing beside a feathered off-world archivist, both holding the same memory stone. The Dominion version had cropped the outsider away and rewritten the oath as a vow to protect Elarion from foreign record influence. Lyra stared at it like someone watching a childhood photograph grow a missing person back into the frame. "My guild was founded with outsiders," she said. "Yes," the Basin answered, not in a voice of comfort but record. "Shared archive compact. Witness exchange authorized." Voron's projection flickered. "Archivist Vey, emotional destabilization is expected. Step away before your family record is permanently compromised." Lyra looked at him then. Caleb saw what the threat cost her. Family record. Guild honor. Every title she had carried. Every proof that she belonged. Dominion had wrapped identity around obedience so tightly that truth felt like self-destruction. Caleb wanted to say something helpful, but the beacon coughed sparks before he could. The relay line overloaded, and half the pillar dimmed. "Not now," he muttered, diving back into the panel. Pike squealed as one wire burned through. I know. Bad design. Mine." Lyra dropped beside him immediately. "What happened? Human beacon was built to call rescue ships, not embarrass a planet. Can it hold? With enough help and disrespect, maybe." He pulled the condenser cell from his belt and shoved it into the power loop. The chamber lights dipped, then steadied. The public feed continued. Outside the basin, the crystal desert carried the records farther, city to city, tower to tower. Caleb could not see the people watching, but he imagined them in blue-lit apartments, transit halls, archive schools, council offices, factory platforms, kitchens, and desert outposts. Millions of faces seeing strangers their government had taught them to fear standing beside their ancestors as friends. Millions of citizens hearing a human named capture priority while the ancient law called him witness. Lyra resumed removing seals, faster now. Not frantic. Decided. There is a central lock, she said. The Dominion root claim. If it remains, they can say these are fragments, not civic record. How do we remove it? Only a protected witness and an archivist can challenge root ownership. Caleb looked at her. That sounds like us. It requires spoken testimony. I am not exactly qualified. You are unregistered. That is the point. The drones moved closer. Voron's projection expanded, trying to drown out the basin's voice. Do not proceed. Any challenge to Dominion root memory is an act of planetary sabotage. Caleb stood slowly, his knee stiff, his palm wrapped in a strip of torn glove. Planetary sabotage, he said. For reading old files. You really built a government around overreacting. Lyra stepped beside him at the central water edge. The lake of liquid light reflected both of them, the human in a torn survival suit, dirty, bruised, tired, the alien archivist with her cloak dusted in glass powder, her tracking cuff gone, her life's work turning into something truer and more dangerous than a career. The basin spoke. State challenge. Lyra's voice came first, clear but low. I am Lyra Vey, Field Archivist of Elarion, trained under Dominion Archive law. I challenge the claim that memory belongs to the Council. The water brightened. Caleb swallowed. I am Caleb Walker, transport pilot from Earth, currently stranded, confused, and apparently hard to file. I challenge any system that needs a witness silenced before it can call itself true. For 1 second, the basin went completely quiet. Then the central lake rose in a wide ring of light, and every Dominion seal across the chamber turned from amber to transparent. Not gone. Exposed. Their edits, timestamps, authorizations, deletion orders, and public replacements all appeared beside the restored originals. Voron's face vanished from the projection and reappeared on a public council feed, caught in his own archive trail. His signature. His predecessors' signatures. Generations of controlled fear laid bare in administrative precision. Caleb stared. That is a lot of paperwork for lying. Lyra's eyes shone, but she did not cry. Not yet. Elarion records everything. Even the crimes? Especially the crimes, if someone knows where to look. The drones received new orders. Their amber lights changed to white, then blue, then uncertain gray. Public Archive Authority contested. Protected witness status pending. Dominion capture priority suspended under root challenge. Caleb looked at Pike. Did we just get promoted again? Pike chirped weakly. Lyra looked toward the sky shaft where records continued rising. No. We made capture illegal before review. I will take it. Across the chamber, citizens' voices began entering the feed. At first only fragments. Questions from tower clerks. Shock from guild schools. A council aide asking why her family's old oath had 2 versions. A factory worker reading an ancestor's recorded trade with an off-world medic. A child asking whether humans had always been enemies, and an older voice answering. Apparently not. The sound multiplied until the basin hummed with Elarion hearing itself differently. Voron's final emergency broadcast tried to cut through, but now it carried no automatic authority. Citizens, remain loyal to verified Dominion history. The basin placed the restored archive beside his words. Verified by whom? That question appeared in every public tower, not spoken by Caleb, not by Lyra, but by the old system itself. The chamber breathed. Lyra lowered her scanner. Her hands were shaking now. Caleb reached toward her, stopped short, and held his open hand in the space between them instead. She looked at it, understood the question, and placed her fingers briefly against his palm. Not romance. Not rescue. Contact between 2 people who had just watched a planet's truth survive the hands that tried to own it. You tried to call for help, she said. Caleb looked up at the records pouring into the sky. I guess I did. Not only for yourself. He did not answer. Some lines were too clean to improve. The memory basin continued to speak through the towers, through the desert pillars, through the patched human beacon trembling in the central relay. Caleb stood beside Lyra under the two moons, no longer just the highest capture priority on Elarion, but something Dominion had feared more than a weapon, a witness who had nothing to gain by lying. The Memory Basin did not sleep after the records went public. It stayed awake under the two moons, bright enough to turn the underground chamber into a lake of trembling daylight. Caleb Walker sat on the lowest step of the central pillar with his back against the glass, one hand wrapped in a strip of emergency cloth, watching his patched rescue beacon shake itself half apart while it continued to carry Elarion's restored history into the sky. Pike rested on his knee, rotor finally still, status eye dim but stubbornly green. Around them, the memory stones kept opening. Some showed ancient trade routes. Some showed treaties. Some showed songs shared between species whose names Dominion schoolbooks had replaced with contamination codes. Lyra Vey stood at the water's edge, scanner lowered at her side, her face lit by records no longer asking permission to exist. She had not moved for several minutes. Caleb recognized that kind of stillness. It came after a system failed in public and the person who had trusted it had to decide whether grief or duty got the next breath. "You should sit," he said quietly. "I am standing. That is usually the stage before sitting." She looked at him then, and despite everything, one corner of her mouth almost moved. "Is that human medicine? Human observation. Less respected but cheaper." She finally sat on the step beside him, leaving a careful space between them. Above, through the open shaft, the column of light continued to rise. Voices from public archive towers filtered back through the basin in fragments. Citizens questioning old laws. Archivists demanding unsealed records. Teachers asking for original curricula. Families discovering ancestors who had hosted outsiders, healed outsiders, married into trade houses, defended witnesses, crossed stars. Not every voice was joyful. Some were angry. Some terrified. Some denied what they were seeing even as they asked to see more. Truth had not made Elarion peaceful. It had made the lie lonely. Caleb leaned his head back against the pillar and closed his eyes for 1 second. "How bad will it get?" Lyra looked toward the memory stones. "Bad enough that some will wish the records had stayed sealed." "And you?" She took a long breath. "I wish I had known sooner." That answer was plain enough to hurt. Before Caleb could respond, the basin's voice changed. The deep neutral tone that had guided the restoration shifted into a higher civic register. Root challenge acknowledged. Protected witness status recognized pending planetary review. Field archivist Lyra Vey recognized as active challenge holder. Dominion capture priority invalidated within Memory Basin jurisdiction. Caleb opened one eye. Within Memory Basin jurisdiction. That sounds like a very pretty legal cage. Lyra nodded. Outside this chamber, the Council can still claim emergency authority. Of course they can. Pike chirped weakly. Caleb patted its casing. No, you cannot vote. You are biased. A new projection rose from the central lake. Not Vorin this time. A live public council chamber in the capital city of Orizon Spire, where dozens of officials stood amid floating screens, all speaking too fast over one another. Chancellor Vorin Kale stood at the center, no longer silver and sorrowful, but rigid with contained fury. The basin displayed his feed beside restored edit logs, signature trails, and suppression orders. Every denial he made grew a footnote. Every command produced a contradiction. Archive towers are to suspend unauthorized feeds, Vorin said. The old system placed beside it, no single people shall own memory. All citizens must avoid contact with corrupted witness material. The system placed beside it, public witness records are civic property. The human remains a destabilizing biological anomaly. The system placed beside it, protected witness confirmed. Caleb watched for a moment, then murmured, Your planet has invented the sarcastic footnote. Lyra's eyes did not leave Vorin. The old archive was designed to prevent monopoly. Useful design. We helped them bury it. You did not. She looked at him sharply. I served the Archive Guild. You served the version you were handed. That does not erase harm. No. He sat forward, elbows on knees. But guilt is not a repair plan. The words settled between them. She looked down at her hands, still dusted with blue glass powder. Then what is? Start with what is leaking fastest. And here? Caleb looked toward the city feeds multiplying above the water. People need proof they can touch. Copies. Local records. Names. Something Dominion cannot call a dream from an old cave. Lyra's eyes sharpened. Archivist returning through the wreckage of disillusion. Distributed record anchors. Sure. That sounds better than proof rocks. Memory stones can be copied to civic relays if an active challenge holder authorizes duplication. You are one of those. Yes. So leak the truth professionally. She stared at him for half a second, then stood. That is not the correct terminology. It rarely is. She moved to the central interface and began working. Her hands still trembled, but now they had tasks. The basin responded to her scanner, opening a lattice of relay paths across Elarion. Each tower appeared as a blue point. Dominion-controlled routes glowed amber. Independent academic nodes glowed green. Old trade beacons, thought obsolete, flickered pale white beneath desert towns, port cities, mountain clinics, and rural schools. Lyra exhaled. They never disconnected everything. They only taught us the old routes were dead. Caleb rose slowly and brought the beacon module closer. Dead routes are my specialty today. Together, they built the second transmission. Not the flood of all memory, but anchors, short, verifiable records copied to thousands of locations. The original witness law. The first contact treaties. The edit logs proving Dominion changes. The old archive oath from Lyra's guild. The root challenge confirming Caleb's protected witness status. A child in a school hall could read them. A clerk could preserve them. A mechanic could download them onto a cracked local drive during a power interruption. Truth, Caleb had learned, needed grandeur only once. After that, it needed backups. The drones at the chamber entrance began to change posture. Their amber lights had gone dim, replaced by uncertain blue. One drifted forward and spoke in the same flat voice, but softer somehow. Protected witness Caleb Walker. Field archivist Lyra Vey. External enforcement requests access. Caleb looked at Lyra. External enforcement means Vorin? Likely. Do they have to ask now? The basin recognizes our challenge. That is adorable. Lyra addressed the drone. Access denied until Public Review Council is assembled. The drone hovered. Acknowledged. Caleb pointed at it. I like this version better. The drone did not respond. Outside, through public feeds, the capital had begun to fill its streets with silent crowds. Not marching. Not shouting. Just standing before archive towers where restored records fell down the glass like rain. People held up personal tablets, recording the records before anyone could retract them. Archivists in blue-gray robes opened guild doors and carried memory stones outside. Teachers brought students into plazas. At a desert clinic, an old Elarion woman touched the image of a feathered off-world medic who had helped found her profession. Caleb saw these fragments, and felt the size of the accident he had become. It was too large. He looked away first. Lyra did not. They are not looking for me as a criminal now, he said. No, what am I then? She glanced back at the basin's status line. Protected witness. Unregistered external testimony. Human carrier. Still wanted, she said. But not by the same people, and not for the same reason. He let out a tired breath that nearly became a laugh. That is going to be hard to explain to my dispatcher. Her expression softened. You have someone waiting? A company that will charge me for the lost cargo if I am not legally dead. A sister on Mars who will be furious before she is relieved. A neighbor who feeds my cactus badly. Cactus? A plant that survives neglect. We understand each other. Lyra looked as if she wanted to ask more, but the basin pulsed again. A new feed opened, this one not from the capital, but from an independent archive guild in the southern continent. An older archivist with a lined face spoke directly into the public channel. Field Archivist Lyra Vey, if you can hear this, the Southern Guild recognizes the route challenge and requests record anchor transfer. Lyra froze. Caleb watched the words hit her. Recognition. Not from Dominion. From peers choosing the truth she had risked everything to release. She touched the scanner with both hands. Transfer authorized. Another guild joined. Then a school. Then a port archive. Then a rural memory house whose keeper cried while reading the witness oath aloud. The blue points spread across the map until Dominion amber looked less like control and more like stains between rivers. Voron's emergency feed kept trying to interrupt, but now each interruption appeared beside the question the old archive had given every citizen. Verified by whom? Caleb sat back down because his knee insisted politics could continue without him standing. Lyra remained at the interface until the first wave of anchors completed. When she finally stepped away, the chamber no longer depended solely on his broken beacon. The truth had copies now. Local ones. Stubborn ones. Human enough, he thought, though the technology was alien. There, Caleb said. Now if this place eats my beacon, the records survive. Lyra looked at him. You say that as if your beacon is the most important loss. It is my ride home's best chance of finding me. And yet you used it for us. He shrugged, then regretted it because of his ribs. It was already having a weird day. She sat beside him again, closer this time by maybe an inch. Not much. Enough to be noticed by someone who had survived on small signals. When I found you, she said, I thought the council wanted you because you were dangerous. Reasonable. I am very annoying. They wanted you because you were outside their reach. Less flattering, but probably more useful. No, she said, looking at the light rising through the open shaft. More frightening. To them. Caleb followed her gaze. Above the basin, the two moons hung in the dark like witnesses that had waited patiently for their turn. The public channels were still full of voices. Confusion. Anger. Relief. Questions. So many questions. A world beginning the hard work of becoming honest with itself. He had not conquered it. He had not saved it alone. He had crashed, helped a small creature breathe, pulled a woman from falling glass, and connected a rescue beacon to a truth that had been waiting longer than any one person's courage. Sometimes, apparently, that was enough to get a man wanted by an entire planet. The basin's light softened around them. Lyra closed her eyes for one breath, not in peace exactly, but in the first pause after a lie loses its monopoly. Caleb looked at Pike, at his wrapped hand, at the trembling beacon, and then up through the shaft where Elarion's restored memories moved into the night. He had tried to call for help. Now the whole planet was answering, one unedited record at a time. By the time the first record anchors finished copying across Elarion, Caleb Walker understood that a planet could become loud without anyone raising a voice. The memory basin hummed beneath him, the two moons watched from the open shaft above, and every public channel carried the sound of people reading what had been taken from them. Not chanting. Not raging. Reading. Teachers reading treaty names to students who had been taught there were no treaties. Archivists reading edit logs beside the signatures of their own directors. Factory workers reading civic witness laws projected on lunchroom walls. Old families reading lineage records that included off-world friends, healers, engineers, traders, and adopted kin Dominion had cut out of the frame. The noise of a world changing its mind was not a roar. It was millions of small silences breaking at different speeds. Caleb sat on the lower step beside the central pillar with Pike on his knee and his patched beacon plugged into ancient glass, feeling every ache from the crash arrive now that the running had paused. His right knee throbbed. His ribs burned. His injured palm had stopped bleeding but had not stopped complaining. Across the chamber, Lyra Vey stood at the interface map, sending another batch of record anchors to independent towers. She had tied her torn cloak back with a strip of cable, and glass dust clung to her dark silver hair. She looked less like a fugitive now and more like what she had always wanted to be without knowing it, an archivist who served memory instead of permission. The drones at the entrance hovered in a loose line, no longer amber with capture orders. Their lights stayed pale blue, awaiting public review, which was the most nervous color Caleb had ever seen a machine wear. Then the basin received a news signal from Orizon's spire. The projection rose above the central lake. Chancellor Voren Kale, standing before the High Archive Council, his face calm in a way that had become more frightening now that his authority had footnotes. Behind him, the council chamber flickered with emergency votes, legal objections, public inquiry requests, and millions of citizen access demands. Voren had changed tactics. Caleb saw it before he spoke. The man no longer looked angry. He looked wounded. "Citizens of Elarion," Voren said, voice carried across the public feed, "you have seen disturbing materials released without context. I do not deny that errors were made in the archive's past. But the human presence has triggered uncontrolled restoration. We must pause. We must protect the people from panic. We must place the witness in secure custody until responsible archivists can verify the material." Caleb rubbed his eyes. "There it is." Lyra did not look away from the projection. "There what is?" "The part where he admits just enough truth to keep control of the rest." Voren continued. "Field archivist Lyra Vey acted under emotional pressure and biological resonance influence. She is not to be blamed. She is to be recovered." Lyra's hand froze above the scanner. Caleb saw the line land. Not blamed. Recovered. It sounded kinder than erased. That was why it was more dangerous. The basin's old system placed a restored legal record beside Voren's statement. Witness coercion protocols prohibited. Archivist consent remains valid unless challenged by public evidentiary review. Voren ignored it. He was not speaking to the archive anymore. He was speaking to frightened citizens who wanted truth to arrive with instructions. "If the human is truly a witness," Voren said, "let him come to Orizon's spire. Let him stand before living law, not buried machines." Caleb looked at Lyra. "That is a trap." "Yes." "A polite one." "The worst kind." The projection shifted. A Southern Guild archivist appeared in another channel, then a school rector, then a city magistrate, all speaking over each other. Some demanded a public review at the Memory Basin. Others demanded Caleb be moved to neutral custody. Others feared Dominion might cut the towers if Voren lost control. The map above the water flickered with stress warnings. Record anchors were stable, but the public feed was fragmenting into arguments. Caleb knew that pattern too. Machines failed at load points. Societies did the same. Lyra turned to him. "If we stay here, he says we are hiding behind the old system. If we go to him, he controls the room." Caleb looked up through the shaft at the sky relay beam still climbing. "Then we do something he cannot frame as either." "Such as?" He pushed himself to his feet, slowly, because his body wanted a vote. "We broadcast from the crash site." Lyra stared. "Your ship? It is where this started. No council walls. No ancient chamber he can call contaminated. No Dominion court. Just the wreck, the desert, the pillars, and the spot where your drones first called me captured priority. The drones may not protect you outside basin jurisdiction. They may not arrest me either if the whole planet is watching. May not is doing dangerous work. I know." He unplugged the beacon module from the pillar. The memory basin dimmed slightly but did not go dark. The anchors held. Good. Truth had legs now. It did not need his bad beacon every second. Pike lifted from his knee with a sad little wobble and nearly hit his shoulder. Caleb caught it gently. "You are coming too, buddy. You are evidence that my equipment is not impressive enough to be a conspiracy." Lyra gathered her scanner and looked at the chamber entrance. "The outer desert is open. Voren could send physical enforcement." Caleb nodded. "Then we keep it simple. We walk out slowly, on public feed, with the basin records streaming through your scanner and my beacon. If anyone stops us, everyone sees who wants the witness silent. Lyra studied him in the green light. You keep turning danger into witnesses. I am improvising a brand. She almost smiled, then grew serious. Why would you risk leaving the only place that recognizes your protection? Caleb looked at the memory stones, at the faces of ancient Elarion citizens standing beside people Dominion had erased, at the old law that had named him witness when the modern one named him target. Because if I stay where only the archive can protect me, Vorin can tell people this is just a cave talking to a stranger. They need to see the stranger choose the open. Lyra's eyes softened. That is not strategy only. No, he admitted. It is also stupidity with values. They left the basin under public feed. Lyra opened a channel through every anchor she had copied, and Caleb clipped the patched beacon to his chest strap, letting it transmit a shaky visual from Pike's camera. The drones parted at the entrance, uncertain but obedient to public review status. The blue glass gallery glowed as they passed, ancient images watching from the walls. Caleb kept one hand against the stone where the floor sloped, refusing to limp more than necessary and failing about half the time. Lyra slowed to match him without mentioning it. That kindness was quiet enough to keep. When they stepped out of the cave, Elarion's night struck them in cold silver. The blue glass desert stretched wide beneath the moons, crystal pillars lit in long green lines all the way back to the crash scar. Above, Dominion drones circled at higher altitude, more than before. Not attacking. Not retreating. Waiting for legality to become permission. Caleb looked at the nearest drone camera and spoke before his courage could review the script. My name is Caleb Walker. I am a transport pilot from Earth. I crashed here by accident. I did not come to conquer, contaminate, or collapse your government. I was trying to call for help. The desert carried his voice strangely, every pillar vibrating with the feed. The first thing I did after surviving was check water. Then I helped a trapped animal breathe. Then archivist Lyra Vey found me, and drones tried to take me before she could ask questions. She asked anyway. Lyra stood beside him, still and pale under the moons. Caleb continued. I do not understand all your laws. I do not understand your history. But I know this, when a system has to seize a witness before anyone hears him, it is not protecting truth. It is protecting itself. Across the public channels, responses flooded in, too many to read. Then Vorin's signal cut across the sky, his face appearing as a giant amber projection above the desert, visible from the crash site to the far ridges. Citizens, the human is manipulating emotional record fragments. His words are not evidence. Lyra stepped forward. Then here is evidence. She lifted her scanner and projected the full sequence from the crash site, Caleb using water on the mirror kit, Lyra's first assessment, drones superseding her authority, the glass wake, Caleb pulling her from the sliding ridge, the drones ignoring her safety, the quarantine clause, the outer nerve records, the tracking cuff order, Vorin threatening erasure, the route challenge, the restored archives. Not a speech. A chain. Vorin's projection flickered as public towers received the sequence. Caleb added quietly. If I am lying, show the unedited record that proves it. The desert went silent. Not because there was no noise, but because everyone was waiting for a government built on memory to produce one memory it had not touched. Vorin did not answer. The amber projection remained above them, enormous and empty of proof. Then the lead drone near Caleb turned its light from blue to green. Public evidentiary chain verified. Protected witness status extended beyond basin jurisdiction pending planetary review. One by one, the surrounding drones shifted green. Caleb let out a breath he had been holding since the cave. I like green. Lyra's shoulders lowered. So do I. Vorin's projection collapsed, not defeated forever, not punished, not neatly ended, but reduced. No longer the only voice large enough to fill the sky. Across Elarion, public channels opened wider. Citizens asked for local reviews. Guilds requested full anchor copies. Courts suspended outsider contamination statutes. Teachers demanded restored curriculum. The crash site, once a hunt marker, became the first open witness point. Caleb stood beside his broken ship with Pike wobbling near his shoulder, and Lyra beside him under the moons. He had not escaped yet. He had not gone home. But he was no longer just wanted by the people afraid of him. He was wanted by the people who needed someone their system could not edit. And that, somehow, felt heavier than being hunted. The crash site became a place of pilgrimage before Caleb Walker was ready for breakfast. By first light, the blue glass desert around his wrecked transport skiff shimmered with figures approaching from every direction, not in armies, not in mobs, but in small careful groups that stopped well outside the safety perimeter and waited to be acknowledged by the public drones. Archivists came first, their robes marked with guild colors Caleb was beginning to recognize. Then teachers with students clustered behind them. Then civic clerks carrying portable record stones. Then ordinary Elarion citizens wrapped against the desert cold, eyes fixed on the broken human ship as if it were not metal and scorched plating, but a crack in the wall of their world. Caleb stood under the skiff's damaged wing with a cup of recycled condenser water in one hand, watching Pike try and fail to balance on a bent antenna. His ribs ached less today, which he mistrusted. Pain that quiet usually had paperwork coming. Lyra Vey stood several yards away, speaking with a ring of independent archivists who had arrived from the Southern Guild before dawn in glass sail skimmers. Her charcoal cloak had been replaced by a borrowed field mantle lined with pale green thread, but the tear at the hem remained. Caleb liked that she had not fixed it yet. Some damage deserved to stay visible until the story settled. Above them, the hunter drones hovered in green witness mode, broadcasting everything to public channels. Green, Caleb had learned, did not mean friendly. It meant watched by enough people that nobody wanted to be caught doing the wrong thing. He accepted the distinction. A young teacher approached the perimeter with a hand raised. Protected witness Caleb Walker. She called, the title awkward in her mouth. May my students ask one question? Caleb looked around as if another protected witness might be nearby. Lyra glanced over and gave him the smallest nod. He set the cup down. One question sounds survivable. The teacher guided forward a child with copper-blue skin and wide dark eyes. The child held a tablet covered in restored first contact images. She stared at Caleb for a long second. Were humans our enemies? The desert wind moved between them, sliding over glass, ringing faintly through the crystal pillars. Caleb crouched so he did not loom over her. I cannot answer for every human who ever lived. We are very good at being complicated. But I was not your enemy when I landed here. And from what your old records show, a lot of outsiders were not your enemies either. The child frowned. Then why did they teach us to be afraid? Caleb looked toward Lyra. That question did not belong to him. Lyra heard it, and walked over slowly. She knelt beside Caleb, not above the child, not behind authority. Because fear can be organized, she said. And once it is organized, people mistake it for safety. The child thought about this with the solemn intensity of someone too young to know how often adults hid behind big words. Can safety be organized too? Lyra's face changed. Softened. Yes, she said. That is what we are trying to do now. By midday, the open witness point had become a field archive. Caleb's wrecked skiff served as the center because nobody could move it yet and because symbols, like broken ships, sometimes landed where they pleased. The mirror-kit he had saved appeared from a glass crack near the cargo bay, its translucent spine glowing faintly. It approached only when the crowd quieted, then curled under the shade of the wing as if approving the new use of the place. Pike hovered over it protectively, despite being smaller and less competent. Caleb called that morale. Lyra organized record stations in a wide circle around the crash scar. Citizens brought family archives, school tablets, old trade seals, personal memory stones, anything that might compare against the restored anchors. Some discovered outsiders had once been guests in their family halls. Some found names removed from civic ledgers. Some found nothing at all and still stayed to help copy records for those who did. Chancellor Voron Kale remained in office, technically, but his command channels had begun to shrink. Every emergency order now required public evidentiary pairing. Every speech arrived with archive footnotes. Every attempt to call Caleb a contaminant triggered the old basin's protected witness seal beside his face. Caleb watched one of Voron's public statements collapse into 6 contradiction panels and muttered, "Death by footnote. Brutal." Lyra heard him from the next table. "Accurate. I am starting to respect your old archive." "So am I." Late in the afternoon, the Southern Guild requested that Lyra lead a provisional restoration council. She went still when the message came through. Caleb saw it from across the crash site. Saw the way every part of her wanted to step back because yesterday she had been a field archivist with orders, and today people were trying to hand her a wounded planet's memory. He crossed the glass slowly, careful with his knee. "That face means trouble." She did not look away from the message. "They want me to stand before the public towers tonight." "Seems reasonable." "It is not." "Why?" "Because I helped maintain the system that hid this." Caleb leaned against the crystal outcrop beside her. The glass was cold through his sleeve. "You also helped break it open." "Only after you arrived." "I arrived by losing a fight with gravity." She finally looked at him. "You make everything sound smaller than it is." "No. I make it small enough to carry." That stopped her. Not because it solved the guilt. Because it gave the guilt handles. The public address began at moonrise. The crash site lights dimmed until the crystal pillars became the main illumination, green and blue lines stretching into the desert like veins of memory. Lyra stood on a flat slab of glass near the skiff, Caleb to one side and behind her, not hidden, not centered. Pike rested on his shoulder, camera live. Around them, thousands watched in person and millions through the towers. Lyra held no staff, no council seal, no Dominion emblem. Only her scanner and the restored archivist oath projected above her in old script and modern language. "I am Lyra Vey," she began, voice steady enough that only Caleb could see her hand tighten on the scanner. "I was trained to preserve memory. I was also trained to accept sealed absence as protection. Today, we know that absence was used as a tool. The desert was silent. The human who crashed here did not bring our false history. He revealed the places where it could no longer hold. He is not our savior. He is not our owner of truth. He is a witness. That means his task is not to speak over us. His task is to confirm what the record shows when power wants the record alone." Caleb lowered his eyes. He had not expected that to hit. "It did." Lyra continued. "Restoration will not be simple. Some records will hurt. Some families will learn they benefited from erasure. Some laws will fail under their own origins. Some citizens will wish for the comfort of the edited version. But comfort cannot be the measure of truth." The old oath glowed brighter above her. "No single people shall own memory. No council. No guild. No witness. No fear." Across Elarion, the towers repeated her words. At the crash site, citizens stood with faces lit by glass and moonlight, not healed, not unified, but present. That was a beginning Caleb trusted more than applause. Then Lyra turned slightly toward him. "Protected witness Caleb Walker, will you give public testimony?" He stepped forward because turning around and crawling under the skiff was apparently not an option. His throat felt dry despite the cold. He looked into Pike's tiny camera, then at the people around the crash scar. "I do not have much testimony," he said. "I crashed. I tried to fix my beacon. I helped a small animal because it was trapped. Lyra found me and chose questions over orders. I watched old records open. That is it." He paused. The desert hummed under his boots. "But where I come from, if somebody tells you not to look at a thing, and they send machines to stop you before you even understand it, you should probably look carefully. Together. With witnesses." A few people smiled. Some did not. "Good. He was not there to charm them. I cannot fix your history. I can barely fix my ship. But I can say this: the restored records I saw were not an attack. They were people. People meeting, helping, arguing, trading, learning. People your system turned into danger because fear made control easier. Do not let anyone tell you that looking at the truth is the same as being harmed by it. When he stepped back, Lyra's eyes were bright, but she did not cry. Neither did he. Mostly because his ribs hurt when he breathed wrong, and dignity needed all available resources. The Restoration Council formed before dawn. Not a government yet. Not a revolution tied with a bow. A provisional table under the broken wing of a human skiff, with archivists, teachers, clerks, desert citizens, and drones required to record rather than command. Voron's authority did not vanish overnight, but it no longer moved unchallenged. Local councils suspended outsider contamination statutes pending review. Archive guilds opened sealed shelves. Children copied the old oath onto classroom walls. Caleb watched all of it from the ramp of his ship, exhausted beyond words, while the mirror kit slept near his boot and Pike finally powered down in his lap. Lyra sat beside him as the first pale light touched the glass desert. "You are still wanted," she said. Caleb looked at the crowds, the towers, the hovering drones, the broken ship, the record stations glowing under the moons. "I noticed. By the council, by the guilds, by citizens who want testimony, by your rescue signal if it ever reaches anyone. That is a lot of scheduling. Does it frighten you?" He thought about it. "Yes." She nodded, as if that was the only honest answer. "And yet you stayed for the testimony." Caleb looked out over the blue desert where his crash scar now shone with lines of restored memory. "You were all falling," he said quietly. Lyra did not answer. She only sat beside him as the planet's first open witness point woke under the morning light, and for once, no one tried to edit the silence. By the third morning after the crash, Caleb Walker's ship was still broken, but Elarion was no longer pretending the wreckage belonged only to him. The transport skiff lay beneath the two pale moons and the waking sun, scorched along one side, foam hardened around the landing scar, cables stretched out of its open panels like tired veins. Around it, the first open witness point had become something between a repair yard, a court, and a campfire without flames. Archivists worked under shade screens made from emergency tarps and glass sailcloth. Teachers guided students through restored records projected onto portable stones. Civic clerks copied witness laws into local ledgers. Desert families brought water, tools, questions, and the quiet need to see the place where the official story had failed to hold. Caleb sat on the skiff ramp with his sleeves rolled up, one hand inside the beacon housing, trying to coax a stable rescue pulse from equipment that had developed a personal resentment toward him. Pike sat beside him with its casing open, charging from a solar strip and occasionally chirping whenever Caleb reached for the wrong tool. "I know," Caleb muttered. "You are very wise for something that flew into a wall yesterday." The mirror kit dozed in the shade under the wing, its glassy spine glowing faintly whenever someone walked too close, as if it had appointed itself guardian of the crash site by being rescued first. Lyra Vey stood near the provisional restoration table, reviewing petitions from archive guilds that had spent the night opening sealed shelves. She looked exhausted in the new daylight, but not smaller. Her field mantle carried dust, cable marks, and the long tear she still had not repaired. The public had begun calling her challenge holder. Caleb had heard 3 children call her memory keeper. She answered only to Lyra. That felt important. Near midday, the final ruling from the Emergency Planetary Review arrived. It did not come with music. Just a clean blue projection from 7 independent archive towers, layered over the old Dominion seal and the restored witness law. Dominion capture priority against Caleb Walker, revoked. Protected witness status, extended until voluntary departure or renewed testimony. Field Archivist Lyra Vey, restored to guild standing under independent review authority. Chancellor Voron Kale, suspended pending public archive tribunal. Outsider contamination statutes, frozen pending full historical audit. Caleb read the lines twice, then leaned back against the skiff frame. Voluntary departure, he said. That has a nice sound. Lyra came to stand beside the ramp. Does that mean you are leaving? He looked at the beacon. Its signal light blinked green now, steady every 8 seconds. Finally. My rescue ping reached a trade relay before dawn. A human salvage ship answered. They are 2 days out, assuming they do not bill me for emotional damages. Will they? Almost certainly. She sat on the ramp beside him, careful not to disturb the open panel. For a while, they watched citizens move through the witness point. A young teacher helped her students compare the Dominion version of First Contact with the restored one. An older clerk cried quietly over a trade oath bearing her grandmother's name. A former enforcement drone hovered above a record station, now painted with a green witness stripe by someone with a sense of humor. The world had not healed. Not even close. Vorin still had supporters. Some cities rejected the restoration feeds. Some families wanted the edited comfort back. But the truth had anchors now. It had witnesses, copies, teachers, clerks, children, arguments, and local backups. Lies could still move. They could no longer move alone. I thought being wanted meant being hunted, Caleb said. Lyra looked toward the archive towers shining faintly on the horizon. Here, it means many things now. That is inconvenient. Truth often is. He smiled faintly. You are starting to sound like me. That is unfortunate. The Mirrorkit woke, stretched 6 delicate legs, and climbed onto the ramp near Caleb's boot. He lowered one hand, letting it sniff his glove with a tiny chime from its translucent throat. This is your fault, he told it. If I had not stopped for you, I might have been captured cleanly and avoided all this public importance. The Mirrorkit blinked without remorse. Lyra's expression softened. You saved it before you knew anyone was watching. Caleb shrugged, then remembered his ribs and made the movement smaller. It was trapped. That is always your answer. It keeps being enough. Late that evening, the Restoration Council gathered beneath the broken wing for the closing witness record of the first session. No throne. No banners. No grand punishment. Just a ring of people standing on blue glass around a crashed scar. Lyra entered the final statement into the public ledger. The human witness had arrived by accident, assisted without demand, consented to route challenge, and requested no authority over Elarion memory. Caleb added his own statement, shorter because he trusted simple words more when everyone expected history. I came here trying to call for help. I found people who needed their own records to answer. I do not own what happened here. I just saw it. And I will say, anywhere I am asked, that I saw it. The basin accepted the testimony. The crystal pillars around the wreck glowed softly, not with alarm this time, but with recognition. Lyra walked with him afterward to the ridge above the crash site. Below, the skiff lights blinked. The witness point murmured with tired voices. The moons hung over Elarion like 2 pale eyes that had finally stopped looking away. When your ship comes, Lyra said, will you tell Earth about us? Yes. What will you say? Caleb thought of the crash, the drones, the memory stones, the rescued Mirrorkit, the way Lyra crushed her tracking cuff, the way a whole world began reading itself back into honesty. I will say Elarion was not afraid because outsiders were dangerous, he said. It was afraid because someone taught it to call friendship contamination. Then its people opened the record and found out they had been larger before fear made them small. Lyra looked at him, amber eyes catching the green glow from the desert. And what will you say about yourself? He let out a tired breath. That I crashed, made a mess, fixed my beacon badly, and got wanted by an entire planet for standing near the truth while it woke up. She smiled then. Not much. Enough. That sounds accurate. The wind moved over the blue glass, and the pillars answered with a low, bell-like hum. Caleb stood beside the alien archivist who had been sent to capture him, and had chosen instead to ask questions. He was still tired, still bruised, still far from home. But below them, children were reading the old witness oath aloud, and no one was stopping them. He had not come to conquer a planet. He had only tried to call for help. Somehow, a whole world had answered.